Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our special meeting tonight, the budget speech. And I'd like to welcome all of our viewers on YouTube tonight from all over. I'd like to welcome Colin McLean from the Journal Pioneer is with us tonight. Welcome, Colin. And we have Tony Davis from CBC Television. We have Clayton Smith with us tonight from the Department of Finance downstairs. We also have our CAO, Rob Philpott, and our Director of Finance, Kristen Dunsford, and our engineer from Electrical, Greg Goody. And we have our Fire Chief, Ron Inman, and our Acting Police Chief, Sinclair Walker, and Deputy Mayor, and all my fellow councillors. Welcome to this annual budget speech meeting. And is there a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Deputy Mayor McColeman and seconded by Councillor McDougall. All in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary nay. Carried. Okay, I'll have a few more things to say right after the presentation, but this was, I think, my 32nd budget that I sat through, and they have all been difficult over the years. I still think it's the most difficult time for council to deal, to get through the budget. But I will say this year, things went fairly well. We all had different opinions on things, and that's the way it should be. But at the end of the day, we got no other choice but to come out with a balanced budget and the majority rules. We had an unbelievable year in many ways, with COVID trying to deal with that, with so much development, which was very positive and great, and try to hold the meetings. And I guess we'll go back a couple of years with COVID, but to try to hold the meetings and process the business and follow all of the guidelines and the health regulations. I commend council and staff members for their efforts on that, and it worked out fairly well. We had a lot of Zoom meetings, and so it was one of the busiest years ever. It was the busiest year ever for development and construction. I think our budget, I think we had building permits close to $74 million this year alone. And I think, when I say this year, the calendar year, but I think January and February were close to $2 million already on next year. So that's unusual. It seems like the construction season now goes year round more so than it used to. So it's going to be another very busy year from all reports from what we see in the hopper for major projects coming, and council is working on a number of major projects as well. And we commend the staff for their efforts and trying to get it all tied together. A lot of it funnels through Economic Development Department, but it has to go through Tech Services and other departments to work its way through. And I want to commend Mike Tasuska and all of the other directors, because a lot of the major projects, including the solar one, was through Economic Development, and that's a $68 million project, or 7 or whatever. So it's going to be a great year, and we'll have a little more to say a little later on, but at this time we will turn it over to Deputy Mayor, Deputy Mayor Norma McColeman for the Finance Committee Chair, and your speech. The floor is yours, Deputy Mayor. There'll be opportunities afterwards for councillors' comments.
Thank you, Mayor Basil. Your Worship. Everybody can hear. If you can't hear, just let me know. I'll try to use my outdoor voice. I would like to welcome and good evening, Your Worship, Mayor Stewart, and my fellow councillors, city staff members, members of the public, members of the media, distinguished guests, and those tuning in online. As His Worship mentioned, preparing our annual capital and operating budgets is a significant task under normal circumstances, but the last couple of years have been anything but normal. We appreciate that 2021 was another tough year for business owners and our residents. With this, our key theme for the 2022-23 budget is achieving balance while being resilient. We want to meet the needs of the municipality without reducing any programs and/or services while continuing to make strategic investments. We must also be forward-thinking in our budget planning while also being fiscally responsible. Thank you to our CAO, directors, and managers who continue to demonstrate an ability to adapt and and respond during one of the greatest challenges many of us have experienced. On behalf of Mayor Stewart and all members of council, I would like to extend our appreciation and gratitude for their guidance and support during this past year and during the preparation of this year's budget. We are very fortunate to have a team of dedicated staff who work tirelessly to ensure our residents and businesses have the programs and services they need and want. To all staff, thank you for your continuous efforts to ensure that programs and services are maintained. To our residents who continue to show adaptability, cooperation, and patience as we modify how programs and services need to be delivered based on health measures, we thank you. Your Worship, I believe you agree that despite the challenges of the past year, it is encouraging to see the continued commitment, determination, and the ingenuity of our community. This allows our municipality to achieve great things as we continue to operate in a time of unpredictability. Now, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to Mayor Stewart and my colleagues on council. Together, we again faced a year of uncertainty and were able to offer advice, provide governance, and make decisions during this evolving and changing time. I believe our leadership helped ease the burden of this past year. Tonight, we are presenting a balanced budget where we maintain service levels and make strategic investments to meet the needs of our community while capitalizing on opportunities as they arise. But first, let's reflect on the year just passed. Your Worship, the year 2021 has proven to be a year where many people continued experiencing the impacts of COVID-19 and inflationary pressures. The safety of our employees and our residents was and is a top priority. Council and city staff have closely monitored the continued impacts of adapting and maintaining municipal services while again experiencing revenue shortfalls and inflationary and supply pressures. The city relies heavily on taxation as its primary source of revenue to offer the programs and services that business owners, citizens, and nonprofit organizations rely on. To continue to provide the level of service that users have come to expect, we need to continue building on economic opportunities for our city and the region. We believe that a focus on expanding our non-commercial, our residential assessment, will provide the building blocks necessary for continued growth of our city and stimulate further commercial development. Our latest property tax assessment figures suggest that the partnerships we have entered with the province, Government of Canada, and most importantly, the private sector, have resulted in much-needed residential developments which will provide attractive and affordable housing for our city and in turn create demand for commercial development. Thanks to the tireless efforts of our mayor, my council colleagues, and staff as we contemplated these opportunities. Our leadership on energy efficiency and the utilization of greener sources of energy continues to be progressive and ever evolving. The 80-acre solar farm, phase 2 of our partnership with Samsung Renewable Energy, is being constructed with the solar panel, battery energy storage system, and utility interconnection components being awarded to Aspen Kemp and Associates Incorporated. It is expected that almost 60% of our energy needs will be produced locally by wind and solar power once this project has been completed. We look forward to building on our relationships with Aspen Kent and Associates Incorporated and Samsung Renewable Energy to further bring added value to our community while continuing to reduce the city's carbon footprint. Now, let's turn our attention to what 2022-23 will bring to our city. All municipalities are faced with the need to balance program and service delivery and growth planning, as this is key to our future, while also ensuring fiscal responsibility through efficient use of our tax dollars and long-term planning. The following considerations were contemplated during budget preparation and deliberation. Our city continues to grow, which can increase pressure on service levels. We need to continue to be strategic in our approach and carefully consider opportunities, revenue sources versus costs, and the long-term impact on the municipality and potential future impacts of global pressures such as climate change and a pandemic need to be constantly monitored. Our municipal budget is a policy, in fact, our largest policy and planning document that outlines our priorities. The challenge lies in balancing the affordable and competitiveness of providing essential municipal services and planning for future needs. Further to this, we face competing demands for resources and must make decisions that are fiscally and operationally sustainable. Although the city continues to face budgetary pressures and revenue challenges, we can deliver a balanced budget. The 2022-23 budget we are presenting maintains a focus and vision on achieving balance. We want to meet the needs of the community without reducing any programs and services while still addressing our fiscal responsibility through responsible planning. This will be demonstrated in the priorities and significant investments being announced in this evening's budget. One of the most important budget decisions made by Council is the setting of the municipal property tax rate. I am pleased to announce, therefore, that there will be no property tax rate increases in 2022-23. A unanimous decision of Mayor and Council, maintaining tax rates at their current levels while continuing to provide a high level of service in the face of escalating costs is not easy. Your Worship, Council has the belief that more non-commercial development will mean more families will attract more businesses that will create more jobs. We are sending out the signal that we are open and attractive for business. The major priorities of our municipality are to grow and diversify our community, attract jobs and talent, debt management, and maintain critical infrastructure. Attracting and creating jobs will hopefully keep our young people here. The ability to pay debt servicing costs, which would be the principal and interest payments, needs to be a critical factor when making budget decisions as to not place an overwhelming burden on future generations and taxpayers. Ideally, we would have sufficient revenues to support the high service standards from our programs and services that our residents deserve. This must be done as sustainably and cost-effectively as possible. We believe that with the continued significant investments being made by the private sector in our housing market are resulting in new property assessment, which will result in increased revenue even after we factor in the associated costs with servicing these new developments. The trend of positive reassessment growth must continue and carry on at greater levels. But we cannot depend on the assumption of increased revenue. Our increased expenses and must continue to reach our goal to reduce debt servicing costs, meaning the principal and interest costs on our debt. Over the past number of years, we have seen our operating expenses grow at a greater pace than our revenues. This inflationary pressure is even greater this past year and is expected to continue. At the same time, we are seeing our debt servicing costs increase to levels greater than before. If our debt servicing costs continue to increase as they have in the last few years, this will mean fewer dollars to fund our programs and services to make strategic infrastructure investments. It is this council's belief that the debt necessary to complete current projects will generate future economic benefits that will outweigh the costs in years to come. First, I would like to take a few minutes to discuss our investments in critical infrastructure. Municipal infrastructure such as roads, active transportation, electric, water and sewer distribution systems are essential to the foundation on which our community is built. A strong municipality needs solid infrastructure to provide the services needed by our residents and businesses. Investments in our assets need to be made with evidence-based decisions while at the same time supporting our existing municipal assets. The city accounts for this infrastructure through a capital improvement plan which forecasts our infrastructure requirements over the next decade. This is a comprehensive plan detailing the scheduling of construction of or replacement of roads, sidewalks, ditch infilling, upgrades of our electric, water, and sewer distribution systems, as well as the replacement or acquisition of equipment and other needs. More importantly, it also outlines how the city intends to pay for these needs and how we may leverage the support of other partners to contribute to these projects. To ensure the city continues to have sustainable and effective infrastructure in place, I am pleased to announce that the city will be committing more than $15 million in capital investments in 2022-23. The capital budget involves making investments in the core programs and services that are the responsibility of a municipality. As noted earlier, it is crucial that we support our existing municipal assets. The following investment in the renewal of these assets is being made during 2022-23. $2 million will be invested on our electric system. It is incumbent upon us to ensure the safety, security, and reliability of our energy supply, and it has been anticipated that our electric utility will have approximately $2 million of infrastructure to be replaced and upgraded each year for the next 10 years. $1.35 million to replace a centrifuge at our wastewater treatment plant. Other levels of government will also contribute $1.35 million, bringing the total project cost to $2.7 million. $740,000 has been allocated to replace a street sweeper, dump truck, and sidewalk plow. $600,000 for structural repairs to City Hall, keeping in mind the historic and heritage nature. $576,000 to upgrade our water system, some of which is over 100 years old. As we have noted previously, this is a vital project which will enhance our capacity to continue providing safe and clean drinking water to our residents. Other levels of government will also contribute $1.5 million, bringing the total project cost just over $2 million. $560,000 will be spent on street resurfacing. $503,000 has been allocated for the replacement of sidewalks and the construction of 2 new sidewalks. $350,000 is to be spent on updating our ballpark lighting. $313,000 will be spent on our sewer system. Other levels of government will also contribute $861,000, bringing the total project cost to $1.17 million. $270,500 for the fire and police equipment. $100,000 has been allocated for downtown improvements. I will now highlight the significant new investments being made in 2022-23. I will begin with $6.5 million for the completion of the construction of our 80-acre solar farm. We are receiving significant funding from the other levels of government through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, commonly known as ICIP, and the city's partnership with Samsung Renewable Energy. Total expected projects costs are $65 million, with $48 million committed from other levels of government. This project would not be possible without our strategic partner, Samsung Renewable Energy, who has been fundamental in bringing this project to fruition and now execution. $1 million has been set aside for our new fire hall. $931,000 has been allocated for the completion of the asbestos removal and demolition of the old Holland College property on Granville Street. $687,000 has been allocated for intersection improvements and street extension in relation to a potential development. $500,000 for expenditures relating to the east-west connector road. $500,000 has been allocated towards our ditch infilling program. Your worship, as noted earlier, we constantly face a balancing act when it comes to investing in our infrastructure, whether it is for a new asset or remediation of an existing asset. We are seeing an increased need for utility services, which is driving our need to expand our capacity. This is in addition to the high environmental standards that we must follow. Without the continued financial support of the federal and provincial governments through the various infrastructure programs such as the Canada Community Building Fund, our gas tax, Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, we would not be able to complete many of these capital projects. So tonight we do want to thank our federal and provincial orders of government for these funding contributions. Now we will turn to our operating budget. Highlights from our general fund operating budget include, and the total general fund revenue is $28.5 million, and this is made up of the following: $9.5 million, or 33%, from property taxes. This includes both commercial and non-commercial property taxes. $9.3 million, or 33%, in government transfers from other levels of government. $3.3 million, or 12%, from wind energy sales. $2.5 million, or 9%, for recreational and event revenue generated by community services and culture departments. $1.5 million, or 5%, government transfers for current year capital expenditures. $1.3 million, or 5%, transfers from reserve for current year capital. This relates to projects that could not be completed in 2021-22 due to COVID-19 delays. $400,000, or 1%, relates to miscellaneous revenue streams such as fines, permits, building rentals, and interest. $400,000, 1%, relates to protective services revenue from fire and police services. Majority of this relates to transfers from other levels of government for capital and programs. $300,000, 1% raceway revenue offset by expenses. Total expenses in the general fund for 2022-23 are $32.7 million, and this is offset by $4.2 million in transfers from the utilities to arrive at net expenses of $28.5 million. The following items make up that amount. $6.6 million, or 23% of the provision of recreation and culture. $6.3 million, or 22% for protective services, which includes police and fire services. Public safety is a priority of council, and we are committed to allocating the necessary resources. $5.7 million, or 20% for capital expenditures funded through current year revenue, rather than borrowed with long-term debt. The details of these expenditures were discussed earlier when the capital budget was itemized. $5.1 million, or 18% for debt servicing costs, principal and interest payments. $3.6 million, 12% for public works and technical services, which includes maintenance of our streets, such as engineering, patching, line painting, street sweeping, snow clearing, and provision of street lighting, street signs, and traffic signage, maintenance of the equipment used to perform these functions, and inspection and planning services. $3.3 million, or 11% for administration expenses, finance, human resources, Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, information technology, City Hall operation, and maintenance. $1.2 million, or 4% for general government, which includes the allocation for community support program grants, which will be discussed further. $600,000, or 2% for economic development activities for attraction of economic growth. $300,000, or 1% raceway expenses offset by revenue above. $4.2 million reduction, minus 13% amount recovered through transfers from the utilities from electric, water, and sewer. Next, I would like to discuss our electric utility. Your worship, as we have mentioned many times, Summerside Electric strives to provide cost-effective electricity. This has not been without its challenges. Please know that City Council recognizes this as an impact, and that we will continue to advocate for fairness and equity in the transmission and delivery of electricity to all residents. We continue to follow Maritime Electric's rates based on a council resolution passed a number of years ago. I would like to acknowledge the continued support received from our electric utility in the provision of city programs and services. This support continues to be possible due to additional revenue received from new developments. The utility's support of city programs and services has enabled us to hold the line on property tax rates since the city was formed in 1995. Most municipalities across the country must routinely increase their property tax rates in response to increasing costs of service. However, the city has chosen not to increase these rates and instead relies on the electric, water, and sewer utilities to offset these increased costs. The utility provides direct and indirect support of almost 13%, or $4.2 million, which offsets the cost of city programs and services. Now I will talk about our water and sewer system. We continue to make substantial investments in our water and sewer utilities. It has proven to be a significant challenge to keep our 130 kilometers of in-ground pipes up to date, as certain sections of our water system date back to the early 1900s. But this must be balanced against the need to not unduly burden ratepayers with this additional cost. It is estimated that it will cost us $3 million per year to maintain our water and sewer distribution system over the next 10 years. Central to our beliefs is to ensure that we have the safest and highest quality drinking water system available and an efficient sewer system for our residents for decades to come. To meet this goal, our council will be implementing a water and sewer rate with an average adjustment of $3.18 per month per household, or 10 cents a day. Let's talk about our plan to grow our city. I have spent the last few minutes highlighting some of the things we need to do to keep our infrastructure sound. Our residents enjoy a range of quality municipal services which required significant capital investments initially and require further investments to maintain and upgrade. The biggest challenge to our municipality from a financial perspective is our reliance on borrowing for these investments and the resulting debt servicing level. Even though our long-term debt balance is within legislated limits, it is prudent to ensure that this level of long-term debt can be serviced through operations. Decisions around borrowing for capital expenditures needs to be based on sound business practices whereby there are revenue sources that can offset operating and debt servicing costs. Our debt service costs should ease once we pay off some of our larger loans. For example, Credit Union Place in 2027. We continue to monitor our debt using appropriate indicators and continue to set goals to appropriately manage our debt. Your Worship, to make the community one we all can continue to be proud of, the city has invested much time and effort in developing relationships and partnerships with all sectors of our great city. We are better for the collective efforts of our youth, seniors, young families, and the arts and culture community, and are thankful for their contributions. We continue to celebrate the accomplishments of those who have worked hard to preserve our city's culture and heritage. We must remember where we come from to help set a path for the future. It is also about remembering those who have gone before us in service to our country and who keep us safe each and every day. We thank our Heritage Bylaw Review Task Force for their efforts in the review of our Heritage Bylaw and have allocated funds in this budget to deliver some incentives that have been developed. Residents and the business community also want more emphasis on economic development and growth. We will continue to focus our efforts on attracting leading-edge organizations. In addition, we are always evaluating our current service offerings to ensure they meet the needs of our community. For example, our Bylaw, Policy, and Review Committee guide ongoing reviews of city policies and services, and to discuss ways in which our programs and services can continue to meet the needs of residents and businesses. While we are blessed with leading-edge thinking and approaches in our city, it is still a constant challenge to attract and develop new lines of business to diversify our community, or diversify our economy. While no government can answer to all the wants of all the people, we do reach out into the community for help towards that goal. The city cannot do it alone, and indeed, every year community groups step up to support our citizens. With that in mind, I'd like to turn our attention to the many volunteers and organizations who provide this support. We all depend upon and appreciate the dedication, commitment, and perseverance of the dozens of not-for-profit organizations who deliver critical programs and important services to our local community and residents that may otherwise not be available. To ensure the most fair and equitable distribution of resources and support, the city is guided by policy, criteria, and best practice. A significant part of the city's budget is allocated to our nonprofit organizations through our community support program. Council has made a commitment to fund these groups at a total budget amount of $474,500, which is 6.5%, a 6.5 increase over 2021-22. In addition to the amount of $474,500, the city will be sponsoring the 2023 Canada Games with a contribution of $186,250 per year for the next 2 years. It should be noted that in addition to the financial support that the city provides to our outside groups, an additional $250,000 of in-kind services are provided to many of these groups to enable them to deliver high-quality services and programming to the broader community. Furthermore, Your Worship and Council, we believe strongly in keeping our recreational programs and services accessible and affordable to the community and the region. We have set a benchmark in Atlantic Canada as one of the only municipalities to provide no-cost usage of outdoor fields and the lighting of those fields. Additionally, our city boasts one of the longest waterfront boardwalks, a vast park and trail system, not to mention the state-of-the-art credit union place, and now our new multi-purpose dome. Our Community Services Department continues to offer one of the most diverse programming offerings in the province, all designed for social and physical well-being for the residents of all ages. For our community to continue to receive these health and wellness benefits, cost recovery becomes a key focal point for the city staff. Cost recovery benchmarks in municipalities across the country range from 35 to 55%. The city's recreation revenues used to recover costs for community services is approximately 35%. Past community budget surveys indicated that most citizens do favor more emphasis on a user-pay system than a general tax rate increase, while keeping programs affordable to residents. Therefore, in keeping with past years and to ensure that we keep pace with the cost to provide these services, I am announcing a 3% adjustment in fees for users of the arena and pool at Credit Union Place. I would like to finish my speech with a short summary. It is important to continue to recognize the commitments and contributions being made by our residents, businesses, and nonprofit organizations as we share in making Summerside a great community. Your Worship and Council, as mentioned earlier, the developing of a municipal budget is a challenging effort with many competing priorities. Our budget allocates resources across our city departments to fund the services and infrastructure required to maintain our city. We can deliver a balanced budget during these uncertain times due to the growth in our city and funding from other levels of government. We continue to assess our progress in enhancing transparency and accountability on a regular basis, ensuring that my council colleagues have good information on which to base our decisions and to ensure our residents know the basis for these decisions. I look forward to continuing to work with all colleagues on council as we build upon the accomplishments of previous councils, set a foundation for continued success, and measure that success. While it is a challenging time, it is also a time for us to focus on sustainability while building for our future. I believe that the initiatives we highlighted tonight will do both. I want to take one last opportunity to express my sincere appreciation to the management and staff of our city departments, as well as the great visuals that have been provided tonight for our viewing audience through the financial services staff members, as well as administration, community services, culture Summerside, economic development, financial services, fire services, human resources, information technology, police services and public works, technical services, and our electric, water, and sewer utilities for the effective work they do in support of transparency, accountability, and public engagement, all for the greater good of our city and for the people we serve. Residents of Summerside, this is your budget for 2022-23. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for that presentation. And we will give an opportunity to go around the room here for councillors' comments. And since you have just spoken, maybe we'll wait till we start on this side and go around.
Go ahead, I can have a drink of water.
Yes, yeah. Okay, Councillor McDougall, you want to have a few comments? The floor is yours, sir.
I could do that, Your Worship, and thank you. Congratulations, Deputy Mayor McColeman, on the budget presentation. And thank you to my fellow councillors. As well, I'd like to say thanks to CAO Rob, Director Kristen, Clayton, and all city staff. As this is my, I think it's 28th straight budget for the city since '95.
Catching up.
And they just don't happen. It's usually a lot of tough evenings to go through, and some of us have scars, some don't. But anyway, the process we used this year was a good process, and I think it was one of the best processes we've used since the city started. So I want to congratulate Kristen and Clayton on that. But one thing I do want to say is I've been meeting with the MPs the last couple of days. I met with Heath McDonald, MP Heath McDonald yesterday. I met with Sean, MP Sean Casey today. And I was on FCM meetings all last week. And one of the important things, that the message that we need to put out there, is we need to thank our federal and provincial partners for the funding opportunities that we do, and I was really pleased to see that in the budget. So I just wanted to pass that along. Again, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDougall. Councillor Ramsey, give a few words.
I do, just a few. Thank you, Deputy Mayor McColeman. That was a great presentation. And I'd like to thank city staff and every councillor in your worship in this room, because it was quite a week of discussion and a lot of agreeing and disagreeing, but we came to the budget that we felt was best for the city of Summerside. It's not always easy, but we certainly put a lot of effort and time into it, and I just want to thank everyone, and I hope that the city of Summerside can appreciate the amount of time and effort and concerns for them, as well as the infrastructure and everything else that has to take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. Councillor Campbell, the electrical chair, and the man in charge of the windmills and the solar and everything else. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Kirsten and Clayton for making this understandable for me. This is my eighth one, and they're not the easiest thing in the world to read, but they made it really, really well for us. I'd like to also thank the directors for helping me look after the needs of the Ward 5 Hillcrest Platte River residents. Ward 5, I find, it's the hub of Summerside. Most of the city's retail is up in that area. The hospital, government housing, Hillcrest housing, Bluebell subdivision, the new Foxland project. I think we might have a Kent coming up in that area. Plus, there's another project that's going to be announced Friday. So things are still booming up there. Two of my favorite projects in 2021 were the Polk Road traffic circle and the Granville Street intersection. And I'm sure all the councils the same. I've heard nothing but praise for the job on both of them. And I'd like to thank Aaron for that. and his crew, and also CAO Rob, don't forget Rob is in the background pushing away. And I guess that's about it. I haven't noticed anything in the reserves for McFeely, so we'll have to work on that. And that's my report.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell, for your report and your comments, and we'll continue on. Councillor Snow, community service, recreation, and half a dozen other things. As all councillors have a number of
We all have a number of things on the go. Good evening, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, fellow councillors. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for tonight's presentation. Thank you to CAO and Finance and all the other department staff. As I replay this year's budget process and go through items in the budget, items left out of the budget, and decisions made, I am left with a mix of emotions. First, I think a balanced budget has a lot of positives. Money spent to help our city grow into the future, and money spent to make sure we continue to provide the service our residents can be proud of. That said, I'm also left with some disappointment. To none of my fellow councillors' surprise, I have an issue with the thought of proceeding with rate increases. As a municipality, we are not protected by the increases that we see on the world markets. That said, average families have to make tough decisions on the way they spend their hard-earned dollars. Instead of eating out, they might have to eat at home, or instead of going to the movies, they might have to spend time at home watching TV. And as a municipality, I think we should have, under the circumstances, made some of those same tough decisions that face the many families we represent. In no way am I taking away from the hard work that Mayor and my fellow councillors and any of the staff put into this. We put in a pile of time to get through the budget, and there are a lot of good things in the budget that I am happy to see in there. But to further burden some of our residents during this time, I have a tough time, and I have a very difficult time with that. So just in closing, sincere thank you to all my fellow councillors, Mayor, and all the city staff for all their hard work that went into this process. This is the fourth budget that I've been through, and everyone was very difficult. So this is no surprise that this one was just difficult. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Snow. Councillor Drawn, Tech Services and a couple of other committees. The floor, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to use the handheld mic just because my desk mic isn't working at the moment, so I don't know if that's a sign that I shouldn't speak or what, but we'll try it with this anyway. So thank you to Deputy Mayor McColeman for your presentation. I'm sure that wasn't just thrown together today. Secondly, I'd like to thank management and staff for the support during this whole process. Those of us around council chambers, we all come from different backgrounds, and I'm not sure if any of those backgrounds include single-handedly preparing multi-million-dollar municipal budgets. So between all of our directors and our managers, their expertise really guided us through this process, and your recommendations made it as easy as it could have been. Of course, that being said, it certainly wasn't easy. It wasn't a simple task for you, our directors and our managers, or us. We made a lot of capital and operational sacrifices for the greater good of the city, and I hope residents recognize that. I don't think I'd be giving our residents the credit they deserve if I didn't think that they did recognize that. We're all residents of the city as well as councillors, so any shortfalls in service levels or increases in fees or rates, we feel that too, and so do our families and our neighbors. I think this budget is a good example of being responsible and realistic across all of the departments. When it does come to and I'm glad Councillor Snow touched on it, because I kind of have it in my notes here as well. When it does come to any increases in rates or fees, I think people need to realize, and I think most people do realize, that there is sometimes a dangerous cost of not doing so. For example, in order to freeze water and sewer rates this year, I think we would have had to find an additional, and Clayton, you can confirm, but I mean, it's not, doesn't have to be a specific number, but I think we would have had to find like $250,000 just to break even if we were to, you know, keep the rates as they are this year. And we would have had to find an additional, you know, $300,000 next year. Like, it wouldn't have gotten smaller. So if we would have done that, rather than a $3 a month increase this month, we may have waited a year or two or three, and people may have been hit with a $50 increase. So these numbers, they're not just arbitrary numbers to prove a point. Rate shock is a very real, very precedented issue, and with all these small increases that follow inflation and the cost of living, I think we tried to ensure that that rate shock effect doesn't happen. So that's at least how I interpreted, you know, this process of for this year. It's a responsible decision that we made. People will certainly have their opinions on this budget, as they do on everyday issues, as they should. But I think we did the best we could, and we came up with a responsible, balanced budget. So I guess that's all I have to say at this time. I'm certainly grateful to the residents that put me here just under 4 years ago, and I hope they have the same faith in me and in us now that they did back then. And hopefully some of us will be here for another 4 years. So again, thank you to each and every staff member, supervisor, manager, director for the hours that you've put in on this and throughout the year. You sometimes don't get the credit you deserve. And last but not least, thank you to all the residents for putting your faith in me and in us, and for not packing up and moving to Charlottetown. So thanks very much, and congratulations again, Deputy Mayor, on a great presentation, and look forward to the rest of our final term together. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. You mentioned there was hopefully some of us will be back. You probably meant to say everybody, did you?
That's up to the voters, I guess.
Okay.
We'll
Thank
see.
you for your comments, and we'll continue on with Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, for the description. I know it's not easy to get up there and break the news to people, but you managed. And I wanted to thank Rob and Director Kristen, Manager Clayton, Director Greg, Chief Ron, Acting Chief Sinclair, who are all here with us this evening, and of course Brian, who keeps us on the straight and narrow as much as he possibly can. I'll echo what Councillor Snow has already said. There's not much use in repeating the whole thing. People know how I feel about some aspects of the budget. I guess the best way to put it is, I wish as a council we had challenged staff to find the money within, rather than putting it on the residents. I know our residents are understanding and they realize it, but since we decided on a lot of this, they have seen a lot more pressures come at them, whether it be, you know, at the pumps or so on. And it just makes it hard. You feel for people, and you don't want to be the bearer of bad news ever. I know residents have repeatedly said, you know, we have to take care of what we have, and I think if we had have paused on some things for a year, just for even a year, it might have been a little more easier for them to comprehend, because they are getting hammered on other aspects in their households. My ward is highly residential, so maybe that's why I'm hearing so much of it. The $500,000 in the budget for the start planning of the East-West Connector will be very, very much appreciated. It is needed. It is needed for our whole city. It's not, it might start in Ward 8, but it's something that's going to benefit all of us, development and safety-wise. I guess that's really all I have to say. Corey pretty much, you know, summed up what I've been hearing, and the hope from people that there wasn't going to be an increase. You know, we can say we match Maritime Electric, and that's all right, but the long and the short of it is that Maritime Electric has shareholders that want to see a profit. Our shareholders in our utility are our residents, and we are not showing them any profit. We're just taking more from them. So anyways, I thank you so much for all of that, Deputy Mayor, and all the work from everybody that went to getting. I know directors had to, you know, cut a lot, and it's, you know, you give your wish list and then you cut it down, but anyways, thank you very much, and we'll do our best to get through another year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. We'll continue on with the Chair of Economic Development and Councillor Brian McFeely from the Planning Board. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship, and briefly, because most of what I was going to say has already been said anyway, so I won't be long, but I do want to congratulate the Deputy Mayor on the excellent presentation of the budget, and as well as everybody else. Thanks staff, all staff, and you know, Director, CAO Rob, and the finance folks. I'm not in the big leagues like the Mayor and Councillor McDougall, but this is my 8th budget, and I think it was probably the most humane of them all. So it was a good process, and you know, that process seems to be getting refined all the time. So I appreciate that. So, and just as Chair of Economic Development, I do want to comment on, you know, some major projects that are, you know, under the Economic Development Department there, and we really just want to thank Council for their support of those projects as we move forward. You know, the Sunbank project, the Holland College project, and there's a few others out there that are in the wind that we continue to try to push forward, and so I certainly want to thank Council for their ongoing support of that. And as well, I want to, as Chair of the Heritage Bylaw Review Committee, and that's a review committee of citizens that have been working over the last year, and a number of recommendations that will come forward in that bylaw that will become to Council probably within the next couple of months. Thank Council for support of some of the initiatives that will be in that new bylaw and the new program. So certainly want to thank Council for that. Others have spoken about the utility increases, and you know, none of us like increases. None of us want increases, and I think you can sense from the discussion here tonight that was certainly a debatable item during the budget process. You know, and it was significant discussion, but you know, at the end of the day, you know, security of energy, quality of water is something that we can't compromise on, and if you don't have the incremental increases, you're kicking the issue down the road, and then all of a sudden you've got significant increases, as Councillor Durand referred to, and nobody wants that in the long run either. So you know, at the end of the day, I think we made prudent and responsible decisions regarding those increases, and you know, nobody wants them, but I don't know how we move forward without them. There's two choices. You don't have them, then you need to raise the taxes, because there's, I think you said in the budget, each $2-point-something million that's transferred from the electric department into our general fund. So that's the profit that the citizens of the city get to enjoy. The citizens are the shareholders, and they get their dividend through the transfer to the general fund, and that keeps our taxes down. And it's quite exceptional, really, that we haven't had to raise taxes since 1995. And you think of all the various infrastructure programs and increase in programs that have happened in the city, that and it is truly amazing that we've been able to accomplish that. And hats off to all the previous councils that have enabled that to happen. So I think it's a prudent and responsible budget, and you know, hats off and congratulations to all the council and staff for getting it to where it is today. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCreely. Deputy Mayor, now if you had a couple minutes to relax and rest, you still have the floor if you want to say a few words.
I don't know if that is on or not.
The light is not on.
Oh, yes, it is. Okay. All right. Just a few personal comments away from the budget speech. I guess for me, I look at the budget deliberations for all of us, we're like a family. We all have needs, we all have wants, we all have wards and residents that we all care about very much. And I guess with a budget, it's like having a household budget or in a business a budget. There's all kinds of things that we need and want, but we can't do it all at once in 1 year, so it takes time. And I'm just reminded tonight of some of the things that were in the budget, such as the fire hall. That has been 8 years really in the waiting and planning and working and trying to set aside funding for it. I also am reminded in the downtown core, we talk about the importance of historic and heritage, knowing where we come from. So I'm very pleased to see that there is a bit put into the budget to help just sort of maybe freshen up some of the things downtown, not major things, but just to show people that we are trying in that downtown core. I think with any budget deliberation, the key word is really balance. We have goals, we have projects, developments. We're trying to show fairness and growing our commercial development. And sometimes it's really hard. And also with COVID-19, we've lost revenue, so we're trying to juggle and balance that loss of revenue, but still maintaining all of the needs that the city as a municipality has. We have a housing crisis need. Overall, our biggest goal and the hardest part for us as colleagues is that trying to make Summerside a good place to work, live, enjoy a wonderful and peaceful quality of life as we see things that happen around the world. We're very, very fortunate. And yes, we have a few little dust-ups when we're going through deliberations, but for the most part, I think we're all trying to, to be good stewards and do our best. So I think the big thing takeaway tonight for me in our budget presented was that we're maintaining the jewels of assets that we have, such as the boardwalk, our green spaces, trying to grow commercial development. Another thing, I'm so pleased, like with our utility, we must never forget the importance of that utility, because it's that utility that gives back to our residents by keeping those costs down as best as we can. And I always think of our residents basically as the board of directors. They receive the benefits when the utility does well, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we sustain that utility and take care of it. So I just want to thank all of you as my colleagues for working so hard at trying to make this together, and thank you, Mayor Basil.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor McColeman. I believe our CAO might want to say hello. The floor is yours, Mr. Phil Pott.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you all members of council for your feedback this evening on the budget process. Your Worship, you had mentioned earlier tonight, and I think I've heard this from some other councillors as well, that this, while it was a very challenging budget process, it was probably quote unquote the smoothest one that we've had over the last 4 years, and I would tend to agree. I think the debates every night during the budget process were very robust and very passionate and very dynamic, but I think it was very impressive to see council come together and really unite on a common vision of what they wanted in terms of a better community. During the speech tonight, you will all recall that Deputy Mayor McColeman talked about the year in review. I'd like to point out, not only to members of council, you've heard me say this before, but also to all those viewing at home, that really, if you look back over the 3 years so far of your term, you've had the opportunity to preside over unprecedented growth in this community, right? And that's something that's nothing to sneeze at, particularly some of the challenges that we've and all society have had to deal with over the last couple of years. We could have easily retrenched as a community, but council certainly took the lead in challenging staff to make sure that we stayed ahead of the game in terms of any trends that we saw coming down the line, and making sure that we are adequately prepared to respond accordingly. I guess just in moving forward, and it's already been said, but I really want to especially acknowledge the efforts of our CFO and our Manager of Financial Services in guiding senior management and council during the budget process and keeping everyone on task, which, given that there's a lot of things that had to be discussed, that's certainly no small order. And I am really looking forward to working with our superstar senior management team over the next 6 months that you have remaining in your term, 6 or 7 months. While you've achieved a lot over the last 3 years, I'm quite excited about what the next few months are going to bring in terms of opportunities. And we look forward to implementing the priorities that you've identified in your budget. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'll just sum up here with a few comments. I just need a couple of minutes here. And I know it was mentioned, but I want to thank the federal government for their support, as well as the provincial government for their support on many projects we have and had here in Summerside. Many millions of dollars came from the federal and provincial government, and as well as ACOA. And also, we got a $1 million grant from FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and we certainly thank them for that. But the reason we get those, because we have a good working relationship, and I want to use the word we, members of council and staff, with the other 2 orders of government. When presentations are made, they step up to the plate, and we can get things done with everybody working together with the 3 orders of government, and that is proven. Just last week, they had the opening of the Dome, and over many projects. So if everybody's working together, the strength in numbers, we know through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, when we've increased from 1,000 members to 2,000, the federal government stepped up to the plate with the gas tax. And rather than one mayor from some part of the country sending a letter to the federal government about projects, if you can get the resolution passed at FCM annual meeting, and every municipality in the country, FCM represents about 90% of the population, or maybe a bit more, the federal government will sit up and listen and pay attention. And that's when they came forward with the gas tax coming back to municipalities. And our little city here is fortunate to get $1.4 million a year, and I think we lucked in. We got a couple of years we had it doubled. So, and we can certainly use it. So when you're working together, you can get things done. And the same thing with the roundabout on Polk Road. It was a major project, and that was certainly accomplished. A lot of very positive comments on that project at the Pope and Central. And also we want to thank the private developers for coming into Summerside and with all of the major projects, whether it's the many housing units and more this year, and the new hotel that's under construction, and many commercial developments that we have had, and more in the hopper to be announced and to be built this year, and some of them have been announced. I think, for example, the large one on Central Street with Centennial Motors, or whatever it's called. But there's a number of them like that. And another major one that will be happening is the $23 million health center. And there was a lot of meetings for I don't know how many years with Tim Banks and the other 2 orders of government and the province and the old Holland College building. And finally, that is under the work is being done right now to remove the asbestos, and it looks like the demolition will take place within a month or 2, I understand, and the construction will start for that. And that's a major project that will attract other developments in that area, but with the 13 acres of land around it. And it was mentioned too about the solar system that we got, that's under construction now in Summerside. And the other 2 orders of government really stepped up to the plate, and Greg is with us tonight, our electrical engineer, and economic development and tech services, working together, put a package together that the federal minister of energy, McKenna at the time, came right to Summerside and announced it with the provincial minister. So, and they did comment about the city working with the other 2 orders of government. And I did mention the roundabout on the Pope Road, which was very important, but a lot of other, even though we had $74 million worth of development permits for construction, that doesn't include the roundabouts and the water and sewer projects and sidewalks and streets. So there was an awful lot of work going on, which is great for the economy to have that much construction work and those construction jobs, because they make good money and they spend it locally as soon as it's made. So that certainly helped, considering we're working our way through this COVID situation. And I want to thank everybody tonight for their comments and the budget. We all have had our comments and thoughts. And Brian, or Councillor McFeely had mentioned myself and Bruce, but Deputy Mayor's been around for 12 or 14 budgets. And everybody here, and Greg, I think, is 6 or 8 or whatever. So, and everybody here has been around for 4 and more. So, but this was my 32nd, and I will say it was the easiest, if that's the right word to use. And I commend Kristen and the staff, the way it was presented with the information. And so we got it through it, and no question, a few bun fights, you know, in the process. But we walk out of here after the end of the budget meeting with handshakes, even though there were different opinions on it. And I had my opinions, and one was mentioned already about the electrical. I'm not a believer in follow maritime electric, but the decision is made, and others here probably didn't agree with it too, but you live with the majority and you go with the majority. You may not agree with the opinion, but you respect it. So that's I think it would have been more of an attraction to even get more development, but it is what it is, and we respect it. But then when you look around, you watch the international news one night and what's going on around the world and in Ukraine. We're so fortunate to be living here in Summerside and on Prince Edward Island and in Canada. So we're very fortunate, and let's not forget our veterans that paid the supreme price to make sure that we have our freedom and our peace here in little old PEI and in Canada. But I'd mentioned my 32nd budget, but it seemed I'd never had one term that was just regular mayor's business that I had to do. You know, whether it was amalgamation was landed on our shoulders first term, I think, or shortly after, and the base closure, and that, I didn't have any gray hair till that happened. And then the tax center battle to get that here in Summerside, with the support of the province and all of the organizations and the chamber and everybody else. And then the redevelopment of Slemon Park. And then in the middle of it, someplace along the line, Waste Watch was a new project on the island. And that was difficult for some residents to deal with it, and what are we going to do? So we had to go through that, and then we had a bad Hurricane 1, was it? You know, before the Dorian, yeah. And there was a lot of damage, and then Hurricane Dorian, I keep getting mixed up with our councillor, but that was difficult for council, and a lot of damage, and I believe our finance department is still working with the insurance companies and the other orders of government in regards to the damage. And then COVID this term here. So it's to get a term where you can just do the mayor's stuff, to use a Don Cherry word, but there's always something. But when something happens, you have to step up to the plate, and the easiest way in anything is to do nothing. And there's none of us in here made that way. You know, we've got to keep working and make things happen. And I think with the census that came out a month or two ago, whenever it was, with our population increasing 7 or 8% or whatever the numbers were, but it's great to see, and I'm a strong supporter of all of the immigrants we can get moving to our city and our area. And it's great to see the population increase, because it means jobs, and it means these developers will build new houses, and you people know how economics work. And so it has been a very interesting term, and I'm sure I want to again commend all council members and staff for their hard work, dealing with, especially this last 2 years with this COVID situation, trying to process the business and deal with that and have meetings, and we were all pretty well zoomed out at the end of the day. And Brian Harlick, I want to thank you too. Brian's been here every meeting, from Human Resources and organizing, yes. And he has all of the reports prepared, and and distributed to all members of council before the meetings, and it's there for us. And I know it takes a lot of work, and you're here at every meeting, whether it's morning, noon, or night, and it's most of them at noon and night, plus he has to get his work during the day as well. Thank you to the media, Colin. It's always great to have you here and reporting, and as well as CBC, you're here tonight. Thank you. And Clayton, your assistants in finance with our Director of Finance, Kristen Dunsford, and Rob, and we have our acting police chief here, Walker, and our fire chief, Ron Inman. Thank you, and thank all, and Greg, I'd mentioned Greg earlier, but thank all of the department heads for their work. I'd mentioned about dealing with the other two orders of government. We're pretty fortunate here when we make presentations to the other two orders of government that they're professionally prepared by our staff for council. And that there's never anything presented to the other two orders of government on a napkin. It's professionally done, and that's, I think, the reason why that they're always there every time we go with a project. And we want to thank our Member of Parliament, Robert Morrissey, and the Minister responsible for Summerside right now is Minister McKay, and all members of government and their MLAs for their work and support of our great city. So that's the Reader's Digest version of my remarks. Thank you, everyone, and we have to come back for a vote on this. On what date? Is the date set yet? March the 31st. Okay, so that will happen, and Brian will have the paperwork sent out and the advertisement and the notes. So before we adjourn, is anybody got any final comment? If not, we'll have a motion to adjourn. Moved by Bruce and seconded by Brian. Can we use the first names tonight? All in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary nay, carried. And give Brian